Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's Tuesday morning. I'm down here at Darling Harbour, Cockle Bay to be exact, and I'm going to go through yet another wonderful book summary in the tradition of Jim's 5am Club, a YouTube channel that is dedicated to spreading OPE, other people's experiences, in the form of book summaries and life experiences. And today I have the honour and the pleasure of doing a book summary of a book written by an outstanding and acclaimed author who has since passed away, an author of a number of awesome books that I've read over the years. The name of the author is Dyer, and he's the author of books such as The Erroneous Zone, and another book that I remember fondly called If You Believe, You Will See. And he's one of those authors that generate thought and gets you to see things from an entirely different perspective, a perspective that is empowering, gives you strength, and can allow you to make sense of this complex, ever-changing world that we live in. So the book that we're going to go through today is entitled The Power of Awakening. The Power of Awakening by Dyer. And he kicks off the book presenting a couple of questions just to get us into the mood and to get us thinking along a line to then take us on a journey of learning and discovery. He says that the whole experience of our past up until right now is all in a thought, which could be either accurate or faulty, and nothing more. So all of the experiences that we have accumulated in our lives currently sit in our brains, in our mind, in our conscience as a thought. But more importantly, as the author says, it could be an accurate thought or it could be a faulty thought. Because what happens is that during our life, we all have a different past. We all are going to experience a different now, a different here and now. I am here, you're somewhere else, and we're all going to live a different future. And along the way, our lives are going to gift us with life experiences, with slithers, just slithers of reality, which we will use to benchmark, to baseline, to compare and contrast our many other experiences to help us build our worldview and help us make sense of the world and what's going on around us. And the author here suggests quite strongly and quite profoundly that those slithers of reality that we're picking up, that we're using to build our worldview, could be right and could be wrong. Our slithers of reality, our baselines, our identities are shaped by the things we do, the things we read, the things we watch, and the people we spend most time with. They have a cultural basis. They have a religious basis. They have an educational basis. We learn, we inherit from others. And not all of those things that we learn, not all of those YouTube channels that we watch, not all of those TV programs that we tap into are entirely accurate and reflective of what is actually going on, but they could be slanted in a particular way to deliver a particular agenda. So what we're saying is we need to be careful in terms of what we expose ourselves to, and as parents and grandparents we need to be careful what our children, our families expose themselves to as well, because those moments of exposure are influencing them. You know, we have a plethora of new influences on a platform known as social media. People who have absolutely no idea. People who have a platform, have an opinion, but that opinion may not be a learned opinion. It could be just a featherweight opinion. It could be a misguided opinion. It could be an opinion based on misinformation or disinformation. The difference between misinformation and disinformation is misinformation is where you've learnt something incorrectly, whereas disinformation is where you've learnt something and you've put a spin on it just to achieve a particular goal that you have, and you're passing on falsities, you're passing on rubbish to others, and you're influencing them at the same time. So the author then goes on to say, well, a lot of the things that come into our lives, a lot of the thoughts that we have, as we mentioned before, could be right, could be wrong. The spin that you put on things could be right or could be wrong, could be empowering or disempowering. But what he says is, how much sense is there in being bogged down with regret or pain about something that is just a pure thought and a figment of our vivid imagination? So the call to action from this author is to take a moment to challenge the thoughts that we have, take a moment to think about the things that may be holding us back, the things that could be right, the things that could be wrong, the things that are causing us grief and the ones around us, and assess them in a balanced way, and be careful that you're not defined, that your identity is not connected to things that are just a figment of your imagination, and things that are not going to serve you, things that are not going to allow you to see the world in a positive light. And the author gives an example, and the example is as such. Now, how would you feel if somebody, anybody, came to you and told you that it's time to feel guilty about the Peloponnesian War? Peloponnesian War, which happened almost 3,000 years ago. A war that happened in a different country with different people fighting on different sides, supporting different ideals. You just laugh at them and say, well, that happened all that long ago, and you know, what consequence is it to me in terms of how the Athenians treated the Spartans? Now, it's very, very similar to the guilt trips that our government tries to put on us for the so-called stolen generations and the treatment of Aboriginal people. Things that happened in a different time, by a different generation, by different people, in a different world. The world was much different, very, very different for everybody back then. Not just for Aboriginals, but for migrants, for single mothers, for people who are poor. Life is never kind to anybody, regardless of which country you are, or whichever time zone or time moment you come into the world. So it's not healthy to feel guilty for being white. It's not healthy feeling guilty for being heterosexual. It's not healthy feeling guilty for anything that happens in the world that is beyond our control, outside of our decision process, things that we can't affect. And it's not our job to make right the wrongs of the past. We've all been wronged in some way. Every culture has its good and its bad examples. Every person has experienced good and evil in their lives. We all have moments where we're productive, and we all have moments where we're not as productive as what we can be. And we shouldn't be defined by those moments in time, because they're not a full reflection of the full spectrum, of the full Rubik's Cube that we are as individuals. As Einstein brilliantly said many years ago, there is no time in a linear frame at all. Time is something that we as humans have invented. In one aspect, you can probably say that we all live in an eternal now, the eternal present moment, which doesn't have a beginning and doesn't have an end. It's just an experience that we're having within our life. So something to contemplate. I know it's pretty hard to get your head around, but feeling guilty about the past, or having thoughts that are limiting, that are causing pain, isn't all that smart. We should be letting go of those painful thoughts and just enjoying the moment, just enjoying and focusing on the things that we can affect right here and now, and not worrying too much about the past, not ruminating on things that are no longer happening or no longer present, and not worrying about the future. Because if you focus too much on the past, then chances are you're going to be worrying and looking at the bad things that happened in your past, or the bad things that you think are bad about your past, and it will lead potentially to one being depressed and unhappy. And if you're spending too much time worrying and focusing on your future, chances are, once again, that that's a figment of your imagination, and you're going to be thinking about your future and causing you grief. And as I say, just like the past could be a figment of your imagination, your future could also be a figment of your imagination as well. Things that are not going to happen, or things that didn't happen. Just something that you imagined may have happened, or something that somebody else may have imagined that may have happened. So the author asks us here to have a think. Why do we elect to use this moment and waste it on something that has already happened? It's over, it's done. and we don't have to continue dealing with it time and time again just because other people try and impose it on us and use it as an anchor or a chain or a prison to hold us in a particular orbit. It's not our problem, and it's not your fault. So don't give it a landing strip. Just let it fly over, let it fly past, and don't ruminate on it. Don't think about it too much, and don't give it, as the author says, a landing strip, else it becomes an issue that will keep you bogged down for today and forever. And to understand that life is an ongoing experience, and it's a long ongoing experience of unfinishedness. I like that. Now, we're all work in progress, and at no point in time is our life finished or perfect. Now, we are always going to be, in a moment of progress, in a moment of unfinishedness of our masterpiece, called our life masterpiece. So a wonderful book with a lot more beautiful points, which I'll touch on in a moment. So Wayne Dyer goes on to talk about a few things that we should consider in order to live a better, a wholesome, a productive, and a satisfying, fulfilling life. He said the first thing we should do is banish the doubt, because the ancestor to every action is thought. And what does doubt give life to? It just gives life to inaction. The best way to conquer fears, uncertainties, and doubts is to take action, and to dream while you're awake, and to continue to affirm the things that you want to bring into your life and the things that you hold dear to the world that you want to shape. The author also talks about the importance of cultivating the witness, because where you place your attention mandates what we will see manifesting from the world of the formless. So what the author here is saying, and he's really good at this, Wayne Dyer is really good at talking about how we can manifest our reality by where we place our attention, where we focus. Because in reality, there's a lot of things happening in parallel all the time. I'm looking over there, and behind me something else is happening. It all depends on where you're looking, where you're focusing, where you obsess. And it's like turning up to a party. I've had this example used years ago, and I love this example. It's like turning up to a party and each person having a video camera, and then looking at the videos of each person's experience at the end of the night. We will all realise that we all experienced a different party, a different present, because each camera focused on different events. There could be some events that are shared that we all focus on, like the bride and groom dancing the waltz, the wedding waltz. But we're all having different conversations, we're all talking to different people, we're all sitting, standing in a different place, looking in a different direction, and hence our video cameras will be capturing a different reality, different slithers of reality that once we piece them all together will have a different outcome, will have a different episode, a different movie picture of that aspect or that moment in our lives. So where you focus, where you obsess, where you look, where you think will manifest your present and manifest your experience, your future, your version of reality. So what the author here is saying is we need to make sure that we're focusing on the things that are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck, that are going to give us pleasure, and hence, rather than focusing on the past, on something that is no longer here, something no longer that we can change, you're better off focusing and witnessing the present, being here right now and making the most of what we've got, rather than the future, which may not come, or the past, which cannot be changed. The author then talks about the importance of shutting down the internal chatter, and it's best to experience silence, both internal and external. You'll notice even during this video that I'm putting together, there is chatter happening. There are cars going over the road behind me. There is noise happening. There are people talking. There are so many distractions that can influence the particular focus that I've got. And they're both external and internal. So it's important to silence and shut down that chatter, and to remove any unserving internal dialogue, because all of those things that we talk about and continue to talk about, those stories that we say to ourselves about our past, about our experiences, are all going to impact us, and they're going to affect the inventory of beliefs that we have stored away and that we bank and use throughout our lives. And to remember that throughout our lives we have a whole litany of handed down doubts that have been handed to us from our parents, our siblings, our grandparents, our uncles, our aunts, our school friends, our teachers, our work bosses, our work peers, our society, the media, the books that we've read, the experiences that we've had. There is a whole litany of doubt, fear, uncertainty and doubt that is infecting us throughout our lives, that we need to sort through and rid ourselves of, because it's not going to help us get to where we want to get to. And the last point that comes from this author is that we need to tame our ego, because our ego is just an expression of our false self. It invites separatedness. It invites specialness. It invites us to be offended. It's cowardly. It's consumptive. And in some way, it's leading us to a level of insanity. So the call to action from this author is to tame the ego and not to go to war with the ego, because you can't beat it. You just need to manage it, to be aware of your ego and to deal with it, because the ego is just like a shadow, an illusion of who you are, the fake you, the false you, and the broken, damaged and unproductive and dismembered version of who you're meant to be. I've also read just recently that who you identify with ends up becoming your ego. So we need to be very, very careful with how we define ourselves and how we see ourselves, because that is something that you'll end up defending in an unhealthy way. So be very open and don't be too fixed in the definitions of who you are. Be flexible in your approach, be value-based, and I guess I'll leave it there because I need to go and start work. But happy Tuesday to everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this book summary and this episode as much as I did in terms of putting it together. Yassas, take care, and bye for now.